Welcome to the Solution Point podcast, where we look for solutions for your business, your life, and the law. My name is Joseph Michael Dickerson. I'm an asset protection and estate planning attorney, and I'm here with my producer and co-host, Catalina Dickerson.
It's a two-hand wave now. Hi, everybody.
So today we have as our guest Raul Garza. He is a top CPA. He has a lot of experience in business accounting, business tax issues, and especially with international clients. So, without further ado, let me introduce Raul Garza. How are you doing, Raul?
Oh, I'm doing well, Mike. Kat, thank you very much for having me here.
So it is, as the name implies, in the Solution Point, we try to go ahead and explore a solution that our guest has come up with for a problem that people have or may not realize that they have. And so I know you were going to share a particular solution with us. Why don't you share that with us?
Yes, well, I thought because of everything that's going on, I thought that it would be appropriate to discuss the current benefits that we have that originated with the CARES Act and was further exemplified with the and expanded with the COVID relief bill that was signed into law back in December of 2020, and it has to do with the SBA PPP round 2. And it's important because that provides great funding for small businesses to make sure we're able to retain and pay employees. The current program expires officially March 31st, 2021, or until the funds are exhausted. And as of today, we still have a pretty good reserve there. So there's a lot of available funds for the companies. I thought I would focus on the issues that we're all going through. This time around, it's a lot more complicated than the first round. There's a lot of hurdles to overcome. And for many small businesses that might not have the expertise in this area, it's very easy to get discouraged and stop the process. But it is a lot of very good assistance that is out there that if you know how to address it and overcome these obstacles, then you should be able to benefit by this wonderful assistance that we have.
All right. So
and you mentioned, I just wanted to ask a real quick question, Raul. Maybe I need some clarification, but I know that we've also, as business owners, we're aware of the process and we've kind of gone through that process. And now you're saying that there's a second round, and there's thankfully money there. There's money on the table, for this program. Is there a problem of awareness for people to apply? Are people not responding in that manner, or are they responding and finding it difficult to navigate?
Yeah, I think by this time, and that's a good question, right? Because by this time, it's not so much the awareness. By this time, I don't think I run into somebody who's not aware of it. Right. It's more the hurdles. When it first came out back in March of last year, it was very easy to get it. The SBA, Congress passed it, assigned it to SBA in conjunction with the IRS. And they relied on the current banking industry right now to process the loan application.
Okay.
The SBA wasn't really prepared to handle the volume that they received. I mean, the funds got exhausted pretty quickly. And sometime in May, sometime between late March of last year to sometime in late April, the funds got exhausted. So they came back with a second addition to the first round by May. But it was very, very quickly because the SBA didn't have all these checking mechanisms that they now implemented. And so now that they've implemented all these verification, it's creating a tremendous amount of bottlenecking in the process.
So could you give us some examples of what they're asking for now so we can let our listeners know the verifications?
Yes, yes, yes. And for instance, let's say the biggest obstacles is now they're checking things to make sure that there's no fraud. I mean, apparently there was some cases last year that led them to implement these things, even though the intentions are good by the government. I think they underestimated the negative impact it was going to have, because the whole purpose is to get the money in the hands of the small employers. But if it's not getting to the small employers across the nation in time, then it's really not reaching its final destination, and it's not really helping for its intended purpose. So some of the obstacles that's happening is, one, there's not a lot of there's a lot of interpretation that's coming out. Like for instance, yesterday they came out with an interpretation that says, okay, for you guys, that's your small Schedule C. Schedule C is really your self-employed individual. You know, I'm a plumber. I got my truck with my tools. I'm a welder. I'm an owner operator, trucking guy. The list goes on. You can even be a medical doctor that just operates as a sole proprietorship. You know, if you had a loss in your Schedule C because of depreciation, for instance, not a real loss, but you reported a loss, then technically you didn't qualify for the PPP if you did not have any employees. And you do have a lot of people that fell in that situation. So the clarification that came out yesterday, keep in mind yesterday, March the 3rd, the second round of the PPP ends March the 31st. So it doesn't give you a lot of time.
Really?
Yes. And the interpretation says, okay, for you guys that fall in this situation, you don't have to use your net income. You can use the gross revenues, you know, to make the calculation of the loan amount that you qualify for. That's a huge relief. So they quickly came up with the interpretation and the form. But keep in mind, now they have March the 31st. A lot of banks will stop taking applications probably a week, 2 weeks before the cut. So if they go,
have they considered extending it, or that was not a part of the interpretation?
well, they didn't address, actually, the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, has been reaching out. They've been very proactive and bringing up some of these issues with the SBA. And they actually asked, look, guys, with the checks, controls that you've implemented, it's really bottleneck things, right? Now, my experience is not all banks have encountered that, right? Some have done a great job in overcoming this. But the AICPA reached out to them and said, hey guys, you really need to take into consideration what's happening. I know you want to check that the applicant qualifies and that the applicant is a legitimate business. And that's been creating a lot of obstacles, because they'll say, well, your name of the company doesn't match your EI number, so it gets rejected. Or some other obstacle, right? So what the SBA responded says, okay, we're going to give you banks more liberties and check some of these issues that are coming up. So if you help us check it, we'll be able to process things. Across the nation, by now, I think we've reached about half of the money, the 300 billion. And right now they put up another 7.5 billion on the table. So the AICPA is saying, okay, give us another 60 days because it's not enough time. You started accepting applications on January the 11th. The first 2 days were earmarked for very small community banks. And SBA hasn't come back and addressed that issue, but extending the time from March the 31st to whatever period they're going to give us. But they have addressed some of these other things that I've mentioned. My experience through my client base is it hasn't been easy, right? I mean, I got clients that presented their completed application since the first week, and to this day, they haven't been approved, much less funded.
Yeah.
And the banks.
Yeah, I was going to say, Raul, What are some of the qualifications for the second round? So if you got the first round, does that mean, it sounds like it doesn't mean you automatically qualify for the second round?
That's correct. Yeah, you don't automatically qualify. The first round, pretty much everybody qualified, assuming you had payroll. This time, they said, well, in order for you to qualify, you have to meet a certain requirement. One of them is that you had to experience a decrease of 25% or more in any quarter from 2020 compared to 2019. That's a number one biggest hurdle. So you don't have to experience that for the whole year, just in any quarter. That's the trigger point to get you into this program. Then the second obstacle to overcome is how to calculate the loan. So one of the other complexities that we're encountering is if you have one of these serial entrepreneurs that have multiple investments, now the SBA is saying, okay, you might have to include in the computation of the determination of the 25% decrease or more, the revenues of all these entities that you own more than 50% or that you control. So I mean, you end up having situations to where one of your companies having experienced the 25% or more, but once you aggregate all of them, you might not meet that threshold.
Right.
But by the same token, you could have the opposite, right? To where individually you don't meet the 25, but collectively you do.
Right.
So it could be a double-edged sword. So
Right, but you don't get to pick.
you don't get to pick. You have to go through. I mean, what you do get to pick is you get to make the assessment in the companies where you own more than 50%, right? It'll be 51 or more, or where you don't necessarily have the more than 50%, but you do control the company. So that automatically, you have to incorporate that entity's gross receipts.
Right. So now this loan is a forgivable loan also, right? Like the original PPP had a forgiveness component. This also has a forgiveness component to it.
That is correct. It also qualifies, which right now that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the forgiveness application of the first round. And then once you get this and you meet all the requirements of meeting the forgiveness qualifications, it'll also qualify for that. Yeah. And they made it easier to qualify for that. So if you got a loan of 150,000 or less, the application is significantly easier now. And you really don't need to present any supporting documentation other than the application itself for forgiveness.
Okay. So what are the things that you need to spend the money on to qualify for forgiveness? That's something that sometimes people got the money because they said, oh, PPP, let's get the money. But you're supposed to spend it on certain things in order to be able to get the forgiveness. Can you share with us kind of some of the things that are acceptable spending for forgiveness?
Yes. And originally they were asking for 75% payroll, and then the remaining 25 was very limited to rental expenses of personal and real property, yeah, utility bills, some interest, and really that was it. With the version that came up in December of last year, they've expanded on that, and they allowed us now for payroll only to be 60% minimum, and the 40% in addition to the areas that I mentioned. Now you have other areas like operating expenses that you can include. You can also take into consideration any damages that you might have experienced because of the protesting that was going on, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So Yeah, they made it a little bit more easier for you to be able to spend the money and qualify for the forgiveness aspect of
It's basically, this is how you can spend your money to have survived 2020,
it. Yeah.
get you out
Yes.
of 2020, and hopefully 2021 is not going to be, a repeat, right? But that's fantastic news for those people, because I can only imagine, the fear that they have, getting the setback with COVID. Who knows how many maybe employees or staff were affected, and their livelihoods. Plus, they get, basically attacked, and then having to deal with that. So, I mean, that's really,
Yeah.
hits the nail right there.
Yes.
And as a semi-serial entrepreneur myself, the biggest expense in most businesses, especially service businesses, is payroll.
Yeah.
So this PPP really, is a shot in the arm for any business, because the probably the biggest single expense item is payroll. Would you agree
Yes,
with that?
and I agree, Mike. And for that reason, I really feel that I think every single one of us, we need to reach out to our elected officials, and send them emails, get them feedback on what we're going through, because the assistance is out there. They're just making it very difficult for you to tap into it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, if across the nation, banks have already approved, and the SBA more than half, that means that there's been some banks and some people working within the SBA that have been able to overcome these hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
But at least here locally, my experience is, I've been getting feedback. Well, it's because the SBA has placed all these responsibilities on us. So we got to make sure that all these things are taken care of. The problem with that is, I can understand, but if you already have a relationship with that client and you already know how they're structured, you got to find a way to overcome these hurdles so that the money can get to these people that qualify.
Right.
I don't know the statistics of the people who have committed fraud, but I don't believe it's a significant percentage from the overall they're getting it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to take into consideration. But if we don't voice our opinions, they're not going to know, because it takes a while for them to respond. Let me give you some examples. I've actually had people that's been rejected because of rounding. I got one particular person that met the requirement of 25%, but when the banker did the computation, that banker computed 24.7 something percent.
Yeah.
So they rejected the application. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
he's not my banker anymore.
no. Well, that particular gentleman had to, which you do have a right? You go with another bank, and hopefully that bank will give you a better response. And like in this example, that's exactly what has happened.
Yeah.
So,
But all the time, that's time lost, and deadlines are not moving.
well, payroll doesn't wait.
Yes.
Whether it rains, whether it shines, whether
That's
there's
the
interpretations
ultimate
that are,
deadline.
yes, you gotta pay every pay period.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's why, to me, is go to the document, the law that was enacted by Congress, and look at the intent. Right. But then unfortunately it gets lost in the politics of it, the bureaucracy of it, and the result is what you said, Kat. The money doesn't get there. And I don't know how they're going to react if you get to March the 31st and it hasn't been processed. Technically, even if there's money there, come March the 31st, that's it. That's the cutoff.
And is that something that, you mentioned writing a letter to your elected officials? Is that part of the letter, is asking them for an extension, or are we giving up on that? What exactly, what do you see as far as a template that should go on that letter? And maybe we can even share to our readers on the Dickerson Digest, maybe give them a little kind of things that they need to express to their elected officials.
Yeah, I think, there is no standard letter. It's just like, let's say my profession, the AICPA, they've been lobbying for not only for the CPA community, but the people that we represent. Because obviously we voice these concerns to them, and then they represent our industry and indirectly our clients. So they go directly to SBA, right? And then say, look, these are the obstacles that we're encountering. You know, I know I'm also involved with the transportation industry through the Laredo Motor Car Association. So I know we have voiced out our concerns to these same people, right? But if you go through the webpage of our elected officials, I mean, you can send them an email, and you don't have to use technical terms. You can just share, this is what I'm experiencing.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be this difficult, right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite ridiculous to get denied because you have a gentleman that claims that 24.7 something is not 25%.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's nothing in the SBA that says you need to round up or round down. So you go with the general rule of rounding, which says if you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, you round down. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you round up. You know,
That's reminds me of second grade math.
yeah, and that's exactly it, Ken. But what you said, during that time, you lost weeks.
Yeah.
So you now have to submit all this information through another bank.
And they have
Keep
to
in mind,
process
yes, some banks, Mike, but you have to submit it in paper. And then that bank might have other forms that you need to submit. Some banks say, no, I want you to send it through my electronic system. So you don't actually submit the actual form, but you have to get all that information and put it in the system. So that process takes time.
Yeah.
So I think this is the part where you have to act promptly, go through the whole process. And if you run into situations like this, reach out immediately to your banker. And if you see that that's not getting anywhere, I think you have to make a decision, but let me try with another bank. Now, if you don't have a relationship with another bank, some of these other banks will allow you to apply with them or through them, but you have to have an established relationship. So some of these guys are asking you, well, at the very minimum, you need to open a bank account, but then wait a certain amount of time. So as you can see, we're going back to time.
Yeah.
So I think this is the part that our elected officials don't get to see.
Yeah.
You know, so if they don't get to see this, they don't understand what we're going through. So for that reason, I say we need to make them aware so that they can do something about it.
Yeah. Now let me kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of do a +1 on the discussion. What if you're one of the lucky or unlucky people, however you want to put it, that didn't have that decrease in revenues of 25% or more? What if you had, let's say, a 10 or 15% difference in your revenues, so you don't qualify for the PPP? Is there any other relief for those people? Are there any other programs out there to help people who maybe didn't take such a big hit, but they still had to pay employees?
Unfortunately, right now, the programs, the two most attractive programs is the PPP that we just discussed and the employee retention credit, but they're both based on having a decrease in gross revenues. So in this particular case, for the PPP, you know, the benefit would come in the first quarter of 2021, but you would have to compare the decrease in any quarter of 2020 to 2019. The employee retention credit, it works very similar. You know, you can take a credit in 2021, which is 70% up to $10,000 per employee. So let's say if you have one employee and you met the decrease in gross revenues of first quarter 2021 versus 2020 of 20%, then you can get a credit of 70% up to $10,000 per employee per quarter. So in my example, if you have one employee that you pay $10,000 per quarter, then the government would refund you 70% of the 10,000, which is $7,000. But in order to qualify for that, you have to have had that decrease in gross revenues. If you have not had that, then these two main programs that are out there, you don't qualify for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little exception to the rule on the employee retention credit, but it has to be, you have to have been in a place, a city or state that was mandated for you to be shut down.
Mm.
And so let's say, like, I think what is it, a couple of days ago, our governor came out saying you
We're
can
open.
open, no mask, do whatever. Well, that doesn't help to
Yeah.
qualify for this. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So
Well,
it's
we're still wearing masks here, though. I think that
Yeah.
he did give language where it can still be, you know, a business person's decision if you're requiring people to wear masks, and that's we're still requiring that
Yeah.
here because here my wonderful handsome husband is too young yet to receive his vaccine and too healthy, and
Yeah.
and I'm far behind him, so.
Far behind.
Yes.
Far behind him. No, well, God willing, we'll get that soon. But it's always be better safe than sorry for sure.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah. For that credit, Kat, though, I mean, you have to have a government order.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be federal, state, or local. You know, so if we don't have that, then you don't qualify. So let's say you have somebody who doesn't meet the 20% decrease, but you do have one of these government orders, and let's say it affected you for 2 payroll periods,
Mhm.
then you would qualify for that credit for those 2 payroll periods.
Okay.
Yeah. But let's say, going back to what you said,
Mhm.
let's say you have a politician that says, let's say here, our governor, I'm gonna remove these orders.
Mhm.
In other words, everybody can operate as normal as before, no mask and no limitations. Then if you don't meet the 20%, you don't have the other mandate, so you also cannot get the credit because of that.
Yeah.
So it's politics will influence the application of this law in this particular case.
So Raul, another thing that we like to talk about here in the solution point are core values.
Yeah.
And so we have our set of core values that we use to make decisions on hiring, on firing, on what clients we take or don't take, you know, and so, you know, do you have a particular core value in your business or in your life that you try to live by, and that you use maybe as your compass to make decisions?
Yes, I do. I mean, this is something, especially any business, right? But more so for service, right? Because I mean, let's say if you're a business and you're retail or wholesaler, I mean, you pretty much, the time you deliver the product, your responsibility is pretty much done, subject to any warranty and other limitations like that. But service is very different, whether you're a physician, a dentist, an attorney, a CPA. The relationship is very personalized.
Mhm.
So when it comes down to clients, you know, I've learned that you have to get a very good understanding with who you're working with. I guess it's no different than the people that you associate with, you know, at a personal level, because it does affect the bottom line. You know, I think you have to take into consideration integrity, how they operate, what they ask you to do. Sometimes you have individuals that ask you to do things that might not be uh, ethical within the realm of what we do. And then I think that's when you have to, I've learned that you have to politely terminate the relationship, right? You know, it's not, I'm not the CPA for you. I know when you're getting started, you always try to find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
But through the years, you learn that it's not worth it, right? Yeah. And for employees, it's the same thing. I mean, I hate to say this, but you know, and part of it could be because as you get a little bit older, you get a little bit wiser, right? But you start to see that certain characteristics that the younger generations have that might not go in line with perhaps what you learn you have to do. You know, one of the things that I've noticed quite a bit is you have quite a bit of the younger generation having these expectations that I'm going to be making all this money and I want to have all this time, you know. And I think there is where, I don't know where along the line, our system from educating them and getting them ready to work, we've created this false sense of reality. Yeah, we all want to make a lot of money and not work. I mean, that's something that everybody wants to do. But I do see this very often. You know, it's like I've been teaching at the local university for quite a while as part of the adjunct faculty. And whenever students bring up this issue, I say, well, you can in this career make a very good amount of money and a very good living. However, you need to put in the time to pick up the skill set. Yeah, you have the credentials, and assuming you want to end at your bachelor's, then you need to now embark in the journey of honing your craft, getting the experience. You know, and I think this is where, I was having a conversation with a young lady, graduated. I think she's already 50, and she chose to get married at a young age and raise a family, which there's nothing wrong with that. So the lady reaches out to me, and she has been working for all these years in a paraprofessional relationship, right? To where you basically do perhaps not high level work, but somewhere along the line, somebody or a group of people or whatever told her that, you know what, your starting salary should be 85,000 because you already have your undergrad degree. And well, it's difficult for most companies to start up somebody at 85,000 because 85,000 is already an executive compensation. And when you try to explain this to these people, it's difficult, you know, and so it becomes difficult to deal with that. In addition to, I only want to work Monday to Friday, 8 hours a day, you know, and I expect to have all this time off. Well, if you start compensating everybody like that, then my hourly rate goes up. My hourly rate goes up. And because in order for us to be able to keep staff, we have to generate more revenue. Somebody has to pick up that cost. Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously there's the other things that like integrity, right? I mean, how some of these people coming in on time, you know, what they do when you're not watching them. It's very difficult for us to be watching them all the time. And, you know, in our industries, we work out with a lot of confidential information.
Even more so right now, where I know you guys are working pretty much remotely, and you know it's hard to keep people accountable when they're remote.
Yeah.
Because you're not like walking by and you're like, why is Facebook open on your computer? You know, you can't see those things that you would normally see if you were just walking across the hall in the office.
Yes. That's exactly what we have. I mean, you're gonna have access to, like I said, confidential information. It's very easy nowadays to steal somebody's identity.
Yeah.
You know, so we're in a position to where, let's say if you're in service, again, like I said, whether it's medical field, health field, or what we do, people trust us with that. So that comes with a big responsibility. But we're gonna need to surround ourselves with good people.
Yeah.
You know, it's and I hear these complaints all the time from the clients, no matter what industry, what they do, they keep saying the same thing. You know, so it boils down to that. I mean, I've actually had people tell me, Raul, you know, I want to increase the salary of this gentleman or the hourly rate of this gentleman because he does a good job, but he doesn't want me to give it to him because it's going to affect his benefits. You know, so, you know, yeah, I mean, is it a financial thing? Yes, but it's also an integrity thing, right? You know, so it puts you in a situation as an employer and, well, I want to retain this person. I want to be able to compensate this person, but now this person is refusing the compensation because it's going to affect him in this other area. I've had others that tell me, well, yeah, he wants me to pay it to him cash. Well, it goes back to the integrity thing, right? It's
Yeah.
circumvents. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Raul, I know our time is running short, and I want to thank you very much for being on our podcast. If somebody has questions on PPP, or if they do any kind of have any kind of international tax issues, or domestic tax questions, you're taking on new clients. How can they reach you?
Yeah, I can be reached at 956-727-4122, or you can send me an email at raul@gap-cpa.com.
And we'll go ahead and put that in the comments, wherever they wind up being on the whatever format
They're gonna
whatever
magically
format you
appear,
hear,
yes.
see this. We'll have that printed, so in case you didn't get to write it down real quick. Raul, again, thank you very much. As always, you're a fountain of wealth of knowledge, and we all appreciate you. All right.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you,
Thank you
Ken.
very much, and
Thanks so much.
we'll see you all next time.
Next time on the Solution Point.